We've got here with me Mindy. Hi, Mindy. How are you this morning?
I'm great. How are you, Al?
I'm fine. I got to figure out which mic you're talking
What mic am I on?
You're on that one.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you.
All right.
So what are we doing today?
Well, today, welcome. This is Common Sense Matters for the Franklin County Democrats, where we like to discuss just average, everyday things that affect us, especially economically, which is good because this morning we have Spike Hosh, who is, that's his profession, is rural economic development. Spike is a 2012 graduate of the University of the South and currently works for the Babson Center of Global Commerce at the University of the South in AmeriCorps Vista. Yeah, you know. Good morning, Spike.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. So, in talking about this, Spike, so rural economic development, what is it exactly that you do? Do you mind explaining that to us?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So, like Mindy said, I graduated in 2012 from Sewanee. I worked abroad for a little bit, and I'm back here working in rural economic development, which is basically focusing on anything that helps keep money in the pockets of workers, helps workers get jobs, helps them gain skills, but also helps businesses be more profitable, expand, make decisions that are less likely to close them and things like that. So the Babson Center of Global Commerce is actually kind of the pre-business center at the university, and I'm part of the AmeriCorps Vista program, the South Cumberland Plateau AmeriCorps Vista program, which targets the plateau area, so Grundy, Marion, and Franklin, but specifically Grundy and on top of the plateau. We haven't quite yet moved down to the valley, but a lot of what we're doing is working with folks on the plateau, so whether it's the mayors, the commissioners, the schools, the health councils, the businesses, the chamber up there, all those things. So I'm one of about 20 vistas, and while many of the vistas focus on health, on education, they work with the mayor's office, the sheriff's office up there, my focus is economic development, so anything related to, like I said, workforce, business, that kind of thing.
Okay, so, I mean, we hear things like economic development. So, I mean, is this sort of like ways for the county to attract new businesses, or I guess new industry is really what is needed in these areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's kind of a whole bunch of different elements to it. Obviously, industry is a big one. On the plateau, we have not as good of infrastructure as y'all have down here. There's less access to water. The roads are not as good of shape. And so attracting industry is one part of that. So whether it's light manufacturing or warehouses or anything else, basically opening up jobs for people to have so they don't need to leave the county or leave the area to go work. But on the flip side of that, there are lots of industries, farms that have openings. So trying to create programs that help individuals and families become better skilled or keep their jobs or get the skills they need to access those jobs. So it's kind of both sides of the equation there. Then, of course, you have things like tourism, so trying to have tourists part with their money. So if they come from Nashville or farther or Alabama or wherever else, when they visit, have them spend money, stay the night, buy things is also part of that as well. So industry, tourism. The typical pillars traditionally were always agriculture, industry, and resources, so mining. Agriculture is harder to do up there than it is down here, and obviously things like coal mines and even rock mines have started closing down for a long time. And so really focusing on kind of changing, I guess, that question from industry to tourism, from coal to tourism, but also expanding the industry we do have, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, are they still doing coal mining up there, or is that, I mean, that's pretty much over with, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been over since, I mean, really since the 20s and 30s up there. But we have rock mines, we have limestone mines, things like that.
So the mountaintop removal.
And now you're in mountaintop removal. No, nothing that extreme.
Oh, good.
Which is good, definitely. But just some extractive things definitely are still up there, and those are important because limestone is used for all sorts of things. It's necessary. It's definitely not anywhere as bad as coal mining. But so trying to strengthen those businesses while also adding new opportunities for people to work in the area is all kind of important. So a lot of what I do, I've been working on doing some research to figure out what kind of economic development entity could operate on the plateau. And we can talk about some of that as well. But then I'm also doing things like junior achievement, which is financial literacy and career planning for students. So all of the Grundy County 8th graders went through junior achievement. And we also did it down here in Franklin this year and last, so helping students think about what do they want to do, how do they get there, how to balance their checkbook, what credit and debit are, what insurance is, how to make a budget, all these things that make citizens more financially stable and better able to contribute to the economy. I'm working with the South Cumberland Chamber of Commerce, which was the Monteagle Chamber, so helping them build capacity to strengthen local businesses, increase communication to state and national and county level governance, so helping them get grants, helping the county talk with TDOT, that kind of thing. Working with some local businesses to develop websites or online stores, things like that. So basically trying to figure out ways to help get more money into the hands of the businesses that make up both Grundy and Franklin counties.
Now, so, wow. And you're doing all of that. That's amazing. The junior achievement thing, though, I mean, that's a big, huge thing. I mean, I wish I had somebody that would have taught me all that stuff.
Me too. So.
Well, I mean, and I think that's very, and you look at that, and I think that's some of the things that are, overlooked in education, and even as a parent, I don't think that you necessarily, consider, taking the time and explaining to your children, you take it for granted as if they, kind of know. But working with 8th graders, and then, now, do you do any other higher level school stuff?
So the plan is eventually to expand it. And Junior Achievement, so they're a national program. They have lots of different hubs. So Franklin County falls under Junior Achievement Nashville. Grundy County falls under Junior Achievement Chattanooga. But they have all sorts of stats. And it's funny you talk about parents because I think their stat is something like 70% of parents think that financial and money matters should not be discussed with their kids. And so these are things, like back in the past, a mom or dad might have taken their child to the bank once a week to deposit a check or take out money or make a payment. Now a lot of that stuff happens online, for instance. So a lot of the kind of observing of financial things that kids used to do aren't happening anymore. And then also parents are scared to talk about money things with their kids because they think it might worry them, it might scare them. And so what we have is a lot of children who don't know how to make a budget, who don't know what credit is, who don't know how to decipher a bank statement or to learn when they should not overdraw or all these things, the terms of a bank account. And so it means that people are less financially literate, and so they become they're not as good workers, so they're kind of the soft skills, and they're not just, how to interact with your boss, but also managing your money, what you should spend your money on, how you save money, how you budget. And so we have kind of a phenomenon, especially in rural America, where workers who even have steady jobs oftentimes will experience an emergency where they need to buy new tires, they have some expense they didn't expect, and they don't even have enough money saved up to cover it. And so that's a huge issue as well. And the first kind of step of that is talking and teaching kids how to budget, how to save, how to learn how to anticipate these things. But so your question was, are we doing anything beyond 8th grade? And so 8th grade was kind of the pilot. And so we did it with all the 8th graders, but the goal is next year to expand that to at least one high school program. And the nice thing about Junior Achievement is that any high school that goes through Junior Achievement has access to additional scholarships to go to college. So they have programming all the way from kindergarten through high school, but I think the next thing we want to do is high school so that we have that extra perk for the students as well.
Oh, that's great. And you were about to touch on one of my favorite subjects there, because, where do you go get money when, Anyway, so working with the kids, that's awesome, to teach them how to, or kind of counsel them in proper money management and finances. And then, now, beyond that, though, when you go into, when you're saying, like, working with adults in, sort of job training or better, in their industry, I mean, what is that sort of like scholarship programs for community college? Is it vocational training, or they're just actual sort of volunteer, groups like the Junior Achievement where you can, advise people to go at the community center? I mean, what does that exactly entail? Or is that something that's sort of being worked on?
So it's kind of all the above, and obviously some things are farther along than others. I guess what it kind of gets to is the root problem for rural economic development is that resources in the United States tend to go towards urban areas. So whether you're talking about state resources, municipal resources, federal resources, or even private nonprofit resources, all these things have metrics where they want to access and affect as many people as possible. So where you have the densest populations are urban areas, and so those resources tend to go towards urban areas. So that means that for something like workforce development, whether you're talking about vocational education, technical training, volunteer programs, any of these things, most of those are in cities. And so trying to figure out how to either get those to rural areas or get rural folk to those is kind of the crux of the question.
Yeah, and when you say rural people to those areas, I mean, I know, I would say that, well, working in Grundy County, I'd read an article a couple of years ago where Grundy County was listed as the poorest county in the state. I don't know if that is still the case, but I know just transportation. Exactly,
yeah. I mean, so that's part of the problem as well, is that you can't really expect someone in a rural context to drive, 45 minutes, an hour to somewhere like Chattanooga or to Murfreesboro where they have access to these things. And so a lot of what I'm trying to figure out is what kind of entities or organizations can we either build capacity for, bring here, or create that will give more access for rural people to these types of things. And yeah, so Grundy County, if you're looking at median income, is the poorest county in the state. It doesn't have the highest percentage under the poverty line, though, so it kind of depends on what you're looking at there. So, for instance, one thing that I've been doing is working with the TCAT in McMinnville to try and get more programming up at the Grundy County High School. Another big project is in Tracy City. The old high school is finally being renovated, so Grundy County and Tracy City have access money from the Appalachian Regional Commission, USDA, a few other groups to renovate that building. And part of the plan is to create a space where we can have satellite areas for either TCATs, technical schools, community colleges, things like that. Because you're absolutely right, in a rural place where, everything is far away and also it costs more in maintenance to keep your car, especially if you're going long distances, you pay more in gas. It's hard to expect people to go to cities to try and access these things.
Well, and just having the finances and, the capability of doing so, I think, getting a reliable vehicle, being able to either secure, the loan or the payment or anything, I think that, and I don't think we often think about that, or take such things for granted, but if you're living in the, in a rural area, and, people say get a job, but then you have to get back and forth to that job, and it's sort of like a big, huge thing. Yeah, it really is.
There are other kinds of resources for workforce development as well. So, for instance, in Chattanooga, there's a women's business development center called Brightbridge, and they have free courses for women entrepreneurs, whether it's accounting or marketing or social media or doing QuickBooks or using Excel. And so what they'll do is they'll actually come to Grundy County for free and have a course, but realistically their grant requires them to have a certain number of people who show up. And so another part of the problem is that, getting the word out in somewhere like a rural area like Grundy County, if you just announce, hey, we have an accounting class from this group in Chattanooga, people reasonably are very skeptical about it. And so another thing I'm doing is working with mayors and commissioners and aldermen and businesses and people who are trying to start up businesses to try and show them that these classes are reasonable, they're good, they're helpful, so that hopefully we can get enough people to these that they can keep coming, whether it's from the small business development centers or someone like Brightbridge.
And then as far as getting the word out, I guess I think that's one of the most difficult things, especially in this new age of technology. What do? You go online and social media.
Yeah.
It seems like the best form of
Grundy buy, sell, and trade, maybe.
Exactly. And the buy, sell, trade. Those pages are quite popular, no doubt. What do you think what are some of the biggest issues or problems, hindrances or whatnot that you think that are facing all the the rural economy?
And these are actually things that are moving in the right direction too, but so I think coordination has been a big issue. So coordination between local government and state grant-giving agencies and the Department of Transportation and local nonprofits. So, and again, I keep talking about Grundy County and the Plateau, but that's just because what I know better. Grundy County, for instance, in terms of attracting industry or manufacturing, they have a few sites that are more or less ready, but there's not been a level of coordination between them, the development district in Nashville, the state, which is building these packages for site selectors to really attract people. And so Franklin is actually much farther along than Grundy County is. So they have sites ready for people to come build factories or build manufacturing. They have an economic development professional. They have a chamber that's very active and very strong. And so the chamber, the local government, the state all work together to try and attract people to Tennessee and to Franklin County. Grundy County is way behind the times on that, but they just went through some programming to identify their best sites to start trying to do that. So just trying to catch up to where a lot of other states are, I think, is one of the big issues, at least for industry. And that's and coordination is kind of an issue across the board. So the largest state park in Tennessee actually is in Franklin, Coffee, Sequatchie, and Grundy, and that's the South Cumberland State Park. And it's actually larger now than Fall Creek. So the question is, okay, we have all this great parkland, but how do we get businesses started, lodging started, restaurants, and how do we get the state to start advertising this to get people who are looking where to go to come to Tennessee? And so that's starting to improve, definitely, but it's definitely a game of catch-up because if you look at, parks like Yellowstone or national parks all across the United States, they have a huge level of coordination between tourism agencies, chambers, the government, local businesses that all kind of pool together to get people to come from all across the United States or all across the world.
So basically, your job is to sort of try to link everyone together and to train them as to how to continue this sort of...
Yeah, so my job is primarily to build capacity, which is kind of like a nebulous term, but basically it means to help organizations become capable of doing these things. I think a good example is the Monteagle Chamber of Commerce was focusing just on Monteagle businesses, and they realized, one, they don't have enough businesses really to sustain themselves, and two, they should be doing a lot more than just having festivals maybe. And so they've rebranded as the South Cumberland Chamber, so they're trying to get members from everywhere from Cowan all the way through Bishop Springs. And their goal is eventually to build up enough people they can hire some people full-time who will focus on doing these things. So helping the mayor's office build sites, but also working with the state tourism agency to highlight things that we think are valuable that can attract eyes and attract people from Chattanooga all the way, to the East Coast or whatever.
I don't know if this is something I should say or not say, but I guess I should say it. As a small business owner, I'm not aware of any of these things.
Yeah, that's definitely,
I've been there for nearly 10 years, and when we talk about accounting classes, I didn't realize that when I took on the business.
That just happened. So the first accounting class in Grundy County was earlier this year. So,
okay, well I feel better about that.
And the chamber, like I said, just changed into the South Cumberland Chamber.
So this is all recent. Okay, good. So I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
They forget about me. I want to be included.
I know sort of like businesses in Sewanee, for instance, the Sewanee Business Association. They're developed because the Monteagle Chamber previously said, we don't really want to expand beyond Monteagle. We want to focus on Monteagle first, or the Gateway, whatever. And so that, that's probably why businesses in Sewanee, for instance, have not heard about being part of the chambers because the chamber didn't want them. But that's changing now, and I think there's a realization that in a very low density population area, you really need to work together because Sewanee can talk about the university, Monteagle can talk about the university, Bishop Springs can talk about the university, and vice versa. So the university can talk about, Stone Door Park over in Bishop Springs, or the Methodist Assembly, or Fiery Gizzard in Tracy City. And so really linking all these things together, and hopefully even, Tim's Ford, linking these as all one kind of package will get more people to this area in general, and I think rise the tide for all the ships, whether you're in Franklin or Grundy or Coffee or wherever.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to forget things when they're not necessarily on your radar. When you mentioned Tim's Ford, I know as a child, going with my family and enjoying the lake and grilling out, or maybe it was a work picnic or a church picnic where they it was at the pavilion and we went there a lot. But now as an adult, I forget. I forget that Tim's Ford State Park is over there, and I could take my children. They have a pool. I guess they have a beach. Do they have a beach, Al? Well, I guess we just went off the bank then.
There's a beach in Winchester, on the lake. And there's a beach. There used to be one in Estill on the lake, but that one is a boat dock
Franklin County
now.
Beach, yeah.
Well, Franklin County Beach is on Woods Reservoir.
Is it still there? Is that still in existence? Or?
Yes and no. It's not really a beach anymore, but it's still an area. Some people still go there, and of course there's one over at AEDC on on Woods as well, the one there on the base. There's one there. I think the public can slip into that one, type thing. But, Dry Creek is the big beach on Tim's.
Okay, and that was it, because, and we, of course, and that, even that, so like I said, it kind of gets off my radar being, now that I live on the mountain. But also off my radar is the places, which Greeter Falls. I took the boys yesterday, and every time I go, whether, normally we go to the Blue Hole, which is above the falls, and, having Wyatt being smaller. And then, yesterday we went to the actual falls, and I think, look at one of the most beautiful places around, and you don't even, think to go.
Yeah. And I think part of that's, like I said, coordination. So if we can get the state to advertise this whole area and say, look, you can rent pontoon boats in Timms Ford, you can go fishing at Shady Valley in Grundy County, you can go hiking at Fiery Gizzard, you can go see this waterfall at Greer Falls, you can go to Natural Bridge in Sewanee and see this cool thing. And then, so part of the new South Cumberland State Park will also allow hunting down the mountain towards the Sherwood area. So if we have that as well, you start to check off a lot of boxes that hopefully anyone who comes will have something for them to do. If you kind of package it all together and coordinate it all together, which I think is really important in the long run, at least.
Now, having this conversation, and I had I met some gentlemen from, they were all from like various places. They had gotten reined in. They were on a motorcycle ride, and they were coming from Portland and L.A., and had picked up one of their buddies in Dallas or whatever, and we were in Cowan, and this one gentleman had asked me, what is the industry here? And I was at a loss. Growing up, I grew up here. My mother worked in the sewing factories, and then when NAFTA happened, all of those, factories closed. And so the only thing I could think was tourism, and then I was like, see, thank you for coming, So, I mean, is that basically what we are kind of being left to rely upon now, do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's definitely a huge part that can be capitalized upon. But like anything, you want to diversify, right? You want to have things to fall back on when the economy tanks and tourists don't come. Franklin County, at least, has a lot of kind of second and third level automotive manufacturing sites. So basically places that produce any number of parts for cars, whether it's Nissan or Mercedes or Volkswagen. So all the factories that are within our region source parts from factories, whether they're plastics or metal or whatever else. Franklin County also has a lot of agriculture, which is pretty strong. And then Grundy County has a little agriculture, a little manufacturing, a little plastics, and then also the region, maybe the United States' largest worm farm is up in Grundy County. So we have other stuff.
The world's largest worm farm?
Yeah, Silver Bay.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They do worms and castings as well.
What idea?
So you got
We have a caller. Welcome.
Hi, this is Helen. I heard Spike talking about how people in Grundy County had a hard time with transportation, getting to these things or getting to a job. And I know that in Franklin County, we have the Franklin County Public Transportation, and it runs out of the senior center behind the hospital in Winchester. And it takes people to work every day. I see people who work at McClure at the dining hall, going. And if you've lost your license for too many tickets, or if your car's broken, that helps people keep their jobs. I was wondering if Grundy County had anything like that.
Yeah, so I can't remember the name of it, but they have a similar thing that currently only serves seniors and folks who don't have transportation, who need to go to a hospital or to a dentist or get medical help. And so one thing that
I would hope that Grundy County could get something like that, because this helps a lot of people to keep their jobs, here in Franklin County. But unfortunately, it'll only go within Franklin County. It doesn't go outside of Franklin County. And Al, maybe you could tell people. I can't remember the official name of it. It's Franklin County Public Transportation.
Something like that. But they'll take you out of town. It costs more to go out of town, but they will do out of town runs. But it costs more than in town. In town it's like $1 one way, and it costs more to take you to Tullahoma or take you to Murfreesboro. But they do some out of town runs if you talk to them in advance.
All right. Well, anyway, it's a lifeline for a lot of people here, in Franklin County. I think it'd be great if Grundy or other counties could get something like that too. And I'll let y'all go.
All right.
Thanks,
Ellen.
Bye.
No, that's a great idea.
Hit the speaker button.
That's a great idea, and
hit the speaker button. To bottom.
Maybe.
I'm a non-operating individual.
And I know that at least some of the commissioners and the mayor in Grundy County have explored this, and so I definitely will follow up and see where it is, because you're absolutely right. I mean, in a place where transportation is kind of key, we should be trying to utilize any resources the state has for those kind of things. And so, I'll definitely follow up and see what the status is on that. But my understanding is that some of the folks in Grundy County have been trying to get some kind of bus service or van service to take folks to work for a while now.
And now looking at Grundy County, and like I said, I drove out through there yesterday, and I look around and I see like all this land, I see all these people, and then I wonder, Like, what do they do for work? I mean, I know that I know a lot of people will travel as far as Chattanooga, things of that nature. But within the county, opportunities there aren't a whole lot of opportunities, are there?
It's true and not true. So here's an interesting kind of, I guess, stat. The census has data on where populations that go to work. And so in Grundy County, of people who live in Grundy County, there are about 5,000 individuals who work, of the 13,500 folks who live there. About 4,200 of those work outside of the county. So that means they leave the county every day. About 800 of those stay in the county and work. And then about 900 individuals come into the county and work. So that's not a lot of jobs. The largest employer in Grundy County is the school system. That being said, for the places in Monteagle, for the factories, so whether you're talking about Tag Plastics in Tracy City, the Worm Farm, the factories in Pelham, are almost perpetually under capacity. So they all have openings, and they have trouble finding people that they think are good fits or good employees. But at the same time, there's a very high unemployment rate in Grundy County of people who don't have jobs who are still even seeking jobs. So it's kind of interesting. It's hard to figure out what exactly the issue is, since you have people who don't have jobs, openings, but they can't seem to match up.
Now, with those, say, the factories and Pelham and things, are those, I know in most of the factories today, you go through a staffing company. You're hired in at a lower rate without any benefits for like a temporary period, and then do you think that's like one of the issues? I mean, are there like
That might be, yeah. So I mean, the two big factories in Grundy County, at least in Pelham, are Toyo Seat and Benchmark. And so Benchmark is mostly metal fabrication, and so that is definitely a hard job. It's hot. You're doing welding. There's not great air conditioning, and they hire people straight on usually. But so those are pretty good jobs, but especially in the summer, you can see why someone would not want to work there.
But then again, like being picky if you don't have a job.
So it might be. It's hard to say. Yeah. So maybe there's a phenomenon of people being too picky for jobs. I mean, all the fast food restaurants in Monteagle, of course, are always understaffed. But again, maybe that's a question of they're paying too low. People who are unemployed don't want to work in a fast food place. I mean, maybe it's not a career they're looking for. It's hard really to say. Toyo Seat, on the other hand, does use a staffing agency, so they work through a group based out of, I think, Tullahoma, Metro Industrial. And so Metro Industrial does the temp stuff for lots of factories throughout Coffee, Franklin, Rutherford counties, as well as Toyo Seat. And so an individual working there would first work on a temporary basis for probably about 6 months. And so that might also be an issue if you're looking for a job to get health benefits because you need those. Working through a temp agency might not make the most sense for you.
Well, and also individuals that I've known that have worked at these smaller factories here in like Coffee County and things of that nature, there are these incredulous hours and mandatory overtime.
Oh, that could be too. I mean, I'm not aware of mandatory overtime, but the shifts are still hard. So I think Toyo, I think it's either Toyo, I think they have 3 shifts that basically operate 24 hours straight. And so you get usually one of those.
It looks like we have another caller. Just a moment. Good morning. You're on the air.
Yes. Excuse me. I had a comment about Grundy County. I recently moved here in the last 2 years, and my husband is not white, and we were particularly told not to go to Grundy County. So I think Grundy County, to attract businesses, needs to make people feel safe and needs to make people feel welcome. So I think that's a big issue that needs to be addressed.
Okay, well, I mean, have you had issues? You said that people told you not to move there, but so far in the community, how do you feel?
Well, I don't live there, and I have not been there for that reason, and but I do live in Franklin County, and I feel quite fine. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely, it's the question of, appearance versus reality for sure. I mean, usually when I tell people that I'm working in Grundy County, it's the same things as like, the chop shop capital of the world, stuff like that. I'm sure there's some stuff like that. And for instance, I think one issue that the tourism industry will have to eventually face is that when you drive through Grundy County, there are lots of Confederate flags, which may make people feel uncomfortable. That being said, the director of the VISTA program is a South African woman, and she is the first to tell anyone that she has never felt unsafe or unwelcome in Grundy County. So I'm sure some of that exists like it does elsewhere, but Also, I think there's a tendency to take these stereotypes and kind of expand upon them to a level that you're definitely right might scare people away, whether tourists or residents or workers or anything like that. So it's definitely something that Grundy County's government and businesses have to kind of wrestle with and figure out.
Sure. Well, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. I'm sure you were, but
thank you.
I mean, people don't feel safe, and so that issue has to be addressed.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest problems, or some of the stigmas that we face, everywhere. And it's everything, I think each community versus the other community, that there's this, that, or the other. But now that the Babson Center for Global Commerce, we are definitely going toward a global economy, and the whole world is becoming globalized, so we're all going to have to give into that eventually. Although I know, personally, we're talking about development. I don't like seeing our rural areas developed. I don't like seeing houses go up in my favorite beautiful places. But
it's definitely a balancing act, I think. You don't want, and this is something I've heard a lot from local people in Grundy County, we don't want this to become Gatlinburg. And you're absolutely right. No one wants Grundy County to be Gatlinburg. That's an extreme that maybe some people do, but I think lots of folks don't want the state parks, want their places where they ride four-wheelers, where they go hunt, that kind of stuff, to become just a bunch of knick-knack shops or whatever, comedy barns, that kind of thing. And so it's definitely a balancing act, but I think there's definitely, especially with, like I said, coordination, the county government, local businesses can help ensure that stuff doesn't happen in a way that local people really dislike it.
And, I would like to go back to the lady that just called, and I would like to assure you, I think beyond stigmas and things of that nature, people on an individual face-to-face basis are pretty good. I don't. There's not too many issues. I've got a good friend, Horace. It's so funny because he won't come to Winchester. He's originally from Detroit, but he goes all over Grundy County, and I think it's hilarious. But yeah, growing up there was that stigma that but I just really don't see that as being an issue anymore. I think that like I said, people on an individual face-to-face basis, it's a new world, and thank God.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that kind of thing, but like I said, I'm sure there's awful people no matter where you go. If you seek them out, you can find them. But in general, I found everyone I've met to be very welcoming, very friendly, and definitely looking for ways to improve their communities. So. Okay,
and then so we were back and we were talking about the factories, and we're talking about constant openings in the fast food restaurants and the factories, and then a huge unemployment rate. Being a small community like that, I would assume that maybe the unemployment could be that the people had worked there, it didn't work out, but then there wasn't another place to go. But when I was talking about the mandatory overtime, I know people that have to pull 6/12s or 7/10s.
Yeah.
And if you're late, forget it. So, when we're talking about cars and then things of that nature, your car breaks down or whatever, or your kid gets sick, and that's the sort of end of that. And so I was wondering, I guess what I was stating is maybe that this Tennessee having become a right-to-work state, going away from some of the more important sort of labor laws, if this hadn't been detrimental to workers actually working, they're not quite as protected, and they're sort of, could you imagine doing 6/12s or 7/10s?
Not at all.
In one of those factories? Yeah. And people do it, and I know people, and there's one girl that I know in particular, and I say girl, she's a woman, but I still like to pretend we're young, and she has been doing this for years, and swing shifts.
Yikes. Yeah.
And so is that sort of part of it? When you're doing all this stuff and you have to look at that, I'm sure. Well, and speaking of tourism, why has Monteagle never embraced the Highlander Folk School? What a great site and a great piece of history.
I think that has a lot of kind of historical baggage, if I can say that. I don't know. Related to it, but I think they're warming up to it. So the Tennessee Historical Trust Preservation, something like that, has bought the Highlander School, and right now they're trying to figure out how to use it, hopefully to get tourists in. So I know the Highlander School over in where did they move to? New Market, Tennessee. They don't want to see the old site being used for any of the programming they're doing, which is reasonable. They've all moved there. They're the real guys there. But I think it'd be really cool if we could open it up, because even now there are folks from across the world who will stop by Tennessee just to go try and see what's left of it. So that's definitely an untapped thing.
Yeah, I had a dream of buying it when the library was for sale, and it has that huge kitchen, and I thought with the high school students teaching maybe like a chef school and formal dining.
Oh, yeah.
And then you could have, an actual dinner every week or something or whatever, and which is actually, because we were talking about hospitality and people being trained in the way of formal dining, these are actually really good vocations.
Absolutely,
that they could take anywhere.
Yeah, so and I'll use my example that I like to point to. It's in Suwanee. The Suwanee Inn is run by Charlestown Hotels, which does boutique hotels across the U.S. And if you're someone who gets trained by them, whether you're just working in the hotel, whether you're a cook, wherever you are, by the time you've finished your training and are working there, you honestly could go to almost any hotel in the U.S. and work in that capacity, which is pretty impressive. And so I think figuring out how to expand those things, not just to people who work there or who apply there, but across the plateau to work, at different spots around the plateau would make a lot of sense.
So Franklin County just broke ground on a vocational school in the side of the old high school. Al can probably tell us more about that, but I will tell you, Al, I had to build a box. All right, this is my story of the week. I had to build a box for a painting to be shipped, and me scoring cardboard, and I know this sounds ridiculous. I mean, I guess you'd have to see the process, but when I got done, I went, 3 years of drafting. So there you go, Mr. Wharf, I can build a box. Well, it was in the vocational center of the high school. Don't be laughing at me, Al. Look.
So what's your question?
My question, this new vocational school.
The TCAT.
The TCAT. So you guys are doing the same thing in the old Grundy County High School, hopefully.
Hopefully we'll get some classes there, I think. So I know, I think previously the city of Tracy City talked to Chat State and Jasper, and basically Chat State said, look, if there's a place where we can go and we don't have to pay for the space, we could consider doing satellite classes. It'd be on a much smaller scale. It wouldn't be its own standalone TCAT. But, that's good for us, too, because if there's a TCAT down here in Franklin, that's a lot closer to Grundy County. And then, it's easier to get satellite classes or teachers from that TCAT up to Tracy City than from McMinnville or somewhere else even.
Here I am. I'm completely ignorant. What does TCAT stand for?
Tennessee College of Applied Technology, I think.
Okay, because I know, Shelbyville's vocational school.
They have the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a huge waiting list.
Yep, so is Warren County. Warren County, of course, they got money for robotics over in Warren County, so they put in $5.5 million into a robotics class over in Warren County. And you got to travel quite a ways. It's a 2-year waiting list in Shelbyville, and most of the vocational places there are like a 2-year waiting list. So it's but you graduate in 2 years, you can't hang around for 2 years, and plus the fact that if you're going on with the scholarship money that's that's available now for you to continue your education, you can hang around for a couple of years. Of course, they're opening that up and making it available for people to go back to school.
Right.
But that's one of the problems too. Is if you want to go into vocational, you can't find a spot, and so that you try to get this money to help fund free your education. You can't find a place to go because you have to wait too long. So that's one of the problems.
And speaking of that, and I'm not aware of this, but what vocational classes are currently available at the high school? Are there any? Because when I was there, we had auto mechanics, there was air conditioning and refrigeration. Of course, I did drafting. There was a woodworking and a metal shop, pre-nursing, cosmetology. That whole building that's now the Franklin County Annex was the vocational building.
Mm-hmm.
Where
I'm not 100% sure. I know they're looking for a welder right now to come in and teach welding. I think they still do some body shop stuff on vehicles. I think they still do some of that. And I'm not really sure outside. I don't know if they still do the air conditioning stuff. Really, to be honest, I don't know. I don't even know if they still do cosmetology. I can't answer that question because I'm so far removed from having anybody out there, that I don't pay any attention to what they're actually doing. in the vocational side, if they're doing anything in the vocational side.
Well, I mean, vocations are definitely needed, and I think, it's a great way to get, train people. I mean, I learned a vocation, and it's helped me, definitely. And then going back, so Spike, basically, when it comes to the state, and, a lot of people, but there is, well, money, I don't know if we want to get in deficits or whatever, but there are programs available to help Franklin County and Grundy County. Franklin County's been able to implement that, obviously looking at what they've done with the downtown, and then Grundy County, and so you are there to work with the local government to just and
access
get
some of that to work towards it. So Tracy City, for instance, did the first step of what Winchester has done with their downtown program. And so the question is, okay, what's the next step? What do they need to do to access more funds? What do they need to do to really target that development in the best way possible? And so, like I said, they've been doing better and better at. So, for instance, the Mountain Goat Trail has allowed them to access money to start building a trailhead in Tracy City, and so that hopefully will allow more businesses to open up around that. But yeah, a lot of what I'm doing is working with local governments, with the development districts. So the development districts, they're separated into 6 districts, I think, across the state. I think both Franklin and Grundy fall in the Southeast Tennessee Development District, maybe not Franklin. But basically what they do is they're a semi-public entity. They work with the state to find grants, whether they're from, the state or from TDOT or the Appalachian Regional Commission, and they pair those with things that the counties need. So, for instance, in Grundy County, they recently accessed money to help build out some water and sewer at what we call the Junction in Coalmont, which is something that's needed if we want to bring any more businesses there.
Now, and this is kind of curious. I mean, I know they create jobs, but when you have, looking at Monteagle, I was thinking about what you were saying now. When I was growing up, Monteagle was all relatively locally owned businesses, small businesses. And Richie's Market, or which was Jerry's Market before that, Sack and Pack, but all locally small owned, even, the truck stops, everything. Right. When look at Monteagle being built up now, just having the big CVS building and the McDonald's and the Sonic, and now, the big Hess gas station with the Wendy's. Is that really helping the economy, or is that money actually kind of going out to, like you said, the more urban areas?
It kind of just depends, right? So, I mean, it's helping if it is able to raise the wages of people who are working there. But if the owners are elsewhere, then, of course, that money, whatever profits go to the shareholders or the owners of the building, is not staying in the economy. So one thing that we're trying to figure out as well is to bring programs that help small entrepreneurs to start businesses. So to help someone try and, for instance, maybe open up a coffee shop in Altamont, that would be really great, because you're absolutely right. If you have these families that are from elsewhere or live elsewhere who buy up these places, the money is leaving the economy unless it's also going towards like wages or something like that. So it's hard to really get a total feel on it. So more business is better because more people have jobs. There's more money that's going there. More people come if there's more businesses. But at the same time, you're right in that if there's a gas station that's locally owned and it's bought out by someone who lives in Chattanooga, then whatever money they're making off of that, it's probably going back to Chattanooga.
And and we were talking about, and we kind of touched on this earlier. I just started reading a book, and I really like it, but it's based, coming out of World War II, going to the Vietnam era. It's following this family. But the one thing that I noted last night as I was reading is that you've watched this family get to have children, and then they've grown up in the neighborhood or whatever. But now that they're teenagers, you've got the kid that's of course mowing lawns for for the summers. But then there's one who's a caddy, and he's also pumping gas. And then there's the girl that's working at the beauty counter at Woolworth's and things of that nature. And our economy has sort of moved to where jobs that were relatively for kids to make their spending money and maybe buy their first car, now adults need those jobs, and it is sort of and then people trying to live on those types of wages.
I mean, I guess the unfortunate reality of as competition increases and people are able to open businesses farther away from where they were traditionally geographically based, larger organizations are going to be able to do things more cheaply, right? So they'll be able to open up businesses, run them more efficiently, make more money, put other ones out of business. So really, when I'm talking about building capacity for local businesses, what I'm saying is, okay, can we teach, the person who owns City Limits in Colmont, or can we teach the woman who owns Dutch Made Bakery to do some of the same things to reduce her costs to be competitive with, maybe a bakery that might try and move into Tracy City otherwise. And so it's hard because, if you're McDonald's and you have the benefit of a huge economy of scale and you're paying the cheapest price for burger patties of anyone in the world or whatever, then it's going to be hard for people to compete with you. And so figuring out how to do that I think is really important. Like I don't know if y'all are familiar with the Mount Good Market, for instance. They've figured a niche where they have enough of a profit margin that people will buy what they want and they're able to run themselves well. They're able to pay their staff a reasonable salary. But really finding that niche was key for them, because they're not competing with like the other, like Subway, for instance, right? Which there's no way they could beat them out in price. So helping businesses figure out how to stay open and find those niches, find the value proposition that makes
and compete with the corporation.
But they beat them in quality and they beat them in service.
Yeah.
So you're willing to pay a couple of dollars more for something better.
Absolutely, yeah.
As I think some people are tired of chains.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And figuring out how to build up more businesses that can do that, I think, is part of the important thing. But they also, I assume, probably have really great books. They probably are not spending a lot of money trying to reconcile their accounts, things like that. So that saves them money in the long term so that they can be more effective and more efficient to make enough money to stay open and do what they want to do, which is focus on customer service and actually really great sandwiches, that kind of thing.
So we're talking about businesses, we're talking about paying their employees well, and of course this is your profession and you have all the numbers. What is considered a good base wage for a person to survive?
I think the typical living wage is something around $12 or $13 per hour, which is pretty high. I mean, so obviously in Tennessee, I think our minimum wage is $7.50 an hour, if I'm correct.
I think it's like $7.25, isn't it?
$7.25, something like that. And so, if you're, especially if you have kids, if you're a single parent, if you have all these other expenses, it's super hard to get by and do that. Especially in a rural area where, maybe land is cheaper, but also the stock of housing options is less. So these kind of things are all problems that a worker or a citizen employee, something like that, has to face and try and figure out and navigate.
And when you say a single parent, I mean, statistically, aren't most families now single parent or single parent
they might be,
households
they might
for the
be.
majority?
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, that's another thing that I've been working to try and do. So, for instance, for a while at the Babson Center, we were doing volunteer income tax assistance, so free tax returns for people who had under $52,000 a year in income. And so for the first time, we expanded that to the library in Franklin County there in Winchester. And so we're trying to expand that and bring that to more families as well, because if you are working minimum wage or just a little bit above minimum wage, then paying $200 or $100 to get your taxes done for your tax return, it's a big chunk of it, right? So trying to figure out how we can get services and resources that in cities there are tons of these things to rural areas is a big part of the equation, I think.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's I mean, I know personally I think I've seeing people struggle is one of the most difficult things, trying to going back to the junior achievement program, hopefully that will help people to maybe stay out of snags like the local predatory lenders and the TCAT. So eventually, though, you are working with Franklin County, but it's sort of just like you're slowly coming down.
Yeah. So of the, I think, 18 vistas we have.
Well, it looks like we have a caller in just a few more moments. Just a moment. Hello, and you're on the air.
Hello, this is Roger Alsop. I'm the Franklin County High School principal.
Hey.
Well, good morning.
Yeah.
I understand there was a question from someone concerning our CTE classes that we're offering.
Yes. I was curious about that because I was reminiscing my days in the vocational building.
Okay. I'm gonna go through the list. There are several of them that we're offering. For the next school year, the 2017-18 school year, we're going to be offering machine technology, welding, several agriculture classes, veterinary and animal science, agricultural engineering and applied technologies, and agribusiness, horticulture, environmental and natural resource management. We're also offering residential and commercial construction, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. We're offering audio-visual production, business management and office management in our business classes. We are offering teaching as a profession. We offer an accounting class. In our health science program, we're offering nursing services, emergency services, therapeutic services, exercise physiology. Under human services, we offer social health services, cosmetology, and we under information technology, we're going to be offering a cybersecurity program of study. Under law enforcement services. In our STEM program, we offer STEM education.
Wow, that's great. I was
my understanding that Huntland also offers several of these programs of study.
That's awesome. You all have so many options for students, and I think that's exactly what folks in rural counties need, is to be able to know how to do these things, and whether they go to get an associate's degree or go to a TCAT or just have those skills and can start working. I mean, that's hugely important. So.
Yeah, and we're hoping to feed into the new TCAT. We're trying to align what we're doing at Franklin County High School with what they're going to offer at TCAT, so it'll be a smooth transition from the two programs.
Very cool. Very cool.
Well, very good. And thank you for calling in and letting us all know.
Okay. You're very welcome.
All right. Have a great one. Bye. Well, I think we are out of time if we haven't gone over. Once again, this was Common Sense Matters. This is Mindy Melton. I was with Spike Hosh, who's originally from New Orleans. Can you believe it? And Al, who has put up with me again, and the Franklin County Democrats. You guys have a great day.
You are listening to WCDT AM 1340, W295 ABFM 106.9, and we're here in Winchester, Tennessee. Thanks for joining us. We'll join our news in progress.